My wife mocked my retirement, flaunted her ex in Paris, and learned too late how silence and preparation destroyed entire life she took for granted. Colleen clinked her wine glass against her own reflection in the kitchen window like she was toasting herself. To Paris, she said, lifting it high, to real men who still know what romance means. Then she drank slow and smug, letting the red stain the rim like lipstick on a confession. David sat across from her, silent, still, not angry, not hurt, just watching like a man observing a controlled demolition from a safe distance. He was 63 with the kind of face people trusted to design their homes. Clean lines, calm eyes, precise. Lately he'd been retiring in pieces, first the contracts, then the clients. Finally, the illusion that the woman in front of him had ever loved him for anything but convenience. Colleen was in a silk robe she hadn't paid for, drinking imported wine she didn't even like. Gerard's flying me out first class, she said, swirling the glass. You remember Gerard, don't you? My ex. He actually listens when I talk. He didn't blink. Enjoy it. That made her smirk widen into something sharper. You're not even going to fight about it. That's so you, David. Honestly, you can barely afford dinner these days. What exactly are you holding on to? David stared at the space just past her shoulder where a small ceramic bowl rested on the windowsill. It was a stupid, ugly little thing she bought in Florence when she tagged along to one of his conferences 10 years ago. Insisted it was quirky. He remembered paying for it. He remembered the look she gave a waiter when she thought David wasn't watching. That bowl had outlasted every nice thing he ever bought her. He nodded slowly. Right, dinner. She topped off her glass, not offering him a refill. Not that he wanted one. Don't wait up for me next week, she added. We're staying near Montmartre. I used to die for. Her tone dripped with a mixture of mockery and freedom. The freedom of someone who believed, genuinely believed there'd be no consequences. Not financial, not emotional, not real. Because for years, there hadn't been. Every tantrum had been met with a check. Every threat with a compromise. Every late night with a quiet morning. Colleen pushed back from the table and walked toward the stairs. You should really think about selling that second condo. Maintenance fees are killing your accounts. David waited until her footsteps disappeared upstairs. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his blazer, still hanging on the chair next to him, and pulled out the slim envelope from his banker. The one labeled termination confirmed. Cardholder privileges revoked. Dated last Tuesday, 2 days before she bragged about Gerard. First-class ticket, his points, her platinum card, his secondary account, the Airbnb she booked for them in the 7th arrondissement, reserved with a payment method that no longer existed. He placed the envelope on the table. Then he picked up his glass, still half full, and took a long, deliberate sip. Across the room, a drawer sat slightly ajar. Inside her last 2 receipts from Bloomingdale's, and the spa membership she still hadn't realized was canceled. Little things. He'd started small. Tomorrow he'd start emptying the attic. But tonight, he simply got up, turned off the lights, and left the wine glass where it was still glowing faintly from the kitchen's dim under-cabinet lighting. Her laughter echoed faintly from upstairs, like a ghost rehearsing lines for a play she didn't know had been canceled. The show was about to close. She just hadn't read the final act yet. The house was quieter than usual, but not in a peaceful way. More like the air had gone hollow. Colleen had left for the airport, her designer suitcase wheels dragging across the front steps like a departing insult. The click of the door locking behind her felt ceremonial, like the final note of a hymn sung at the wrong funeral. David stood in the foyer for a moment, not moving, just letting the silence breathe. Then he went upstairs, not to their bedroom, not to the office where she liked to rearrange his papers to keep things tidy, but to the attic. The old wood creaked beneath his steps as if protesting his return. He hadn't been up there in years. Not since the insulation incident, when he still cared enough to fix things without being asked. Now he ducked beneath cobwebs and angled light, navigating through holiday decor and boxes marked Christmas, Rachel's drawings, and one in his handwriting, Joint Assets 2003 and beyond. He dragged it down, just swirling like ash. Set it on the guest bed, pried the lid open. Inside, time and paperwork formed neatly stacked contracts, copies of deeds, loan statements, receipts, insurance forms she insisted he shred. Why do we need these? You're paranoid. And tucked between folders, a packet of emails he had printed years ago and forgotten about. Well, pretended to forget. He pulled out one labeled regarding apartment loan cosign, her name signed below his, the ink still sharp, a date from 2011, the one she swore she handled herself. And then another, regarding jewelry purchase, refund declined. Attached to a credit card she claimed belonged to a friend. The merchant's address was in town. He remembered the night she came home with that necklace. Said it was a gift from a client. Every sheet of paper felt radioactive now. Not because he didn't know, he'd always known, but because now he no longer cared about keeping the lie stitched together. He didn't want justice. He wanted detachment, and detachment, ironically, required a paper trail. At the bottom of the box, a Polaroid from some backyard barbecue at her sister's place. He looked young. She looked bored. Her body was turned toward him, but her eyes weren't. David slid it aside and reached into the drawer of the guest room nightstand. Inside, a clean legal pad, a burner phone he bought after Colleen's first business trip, and a sticky note with 2 names. He called the first, Jared Lipton, attorney, Discrete Transitions Division. "Mr. Kessler," came the crisp voice on the other end. "I was wondering when you'd call. Let's schedule a face-to-face. I'm done waiting. I'll have a preliminary file ready by tonight." The second call was shorter. A man answered with a gruff, no-nonsense tone. "Lock Solutions. I need everything changed, every door, today. Residential or commercial. Both. Click. Confirmed." David hung up, exhaled. Not a sigh of relief. More like a sigh of clearance. Like the oxygen had changed weight. He looked back at the pile on the bed. So many things she'd signed without reading. So many things she demanded, assuming he'd just make them happen. And for 20 years he had paid the bills, smiled at the charity gala, sat through her family's smug little comments, gave her the illusion of power while doing the math behind every curtain she danced in front of. Now the curtain was coming down, and the audience, him, was finally walking out. The photo popped up on his phone while he was stirring his coffee. Black, no sugar, the same way he took his mornings now, bitter and efficient. It was Rachel who'd sent it. No message attached, just the image forwarded from Colleen's latest Instagram post. The kind of thing Colleen lived for, public adoration from people who knew nothing about her. Curated angles of her life so carefully edited, they might as well have come from a tourism board's brochure. There she was, laughing beneath the Eiffel Tower, head tilted, chin down just so, lashes exaggerated. Behind her, a Louis Vuitton bag casually perched on a cafe chair. Not hers. She didn't have one when she left. She hadn't mentioned buying one either, which meant it had to have been recent. The caption read, "Finally, someone who knows my worth. Clinking glasses, sparkles. Hashtag Paris with him. Hashtag Grateful Heart. Hashtag New Chapters." David stared at the post longer than he meant to. Not because he was hurt, but because it was all so predictable. Her smile was glossy, empty, like she practiced it in elevators. Her followers, mostly suburban gossips and ex-colleagues she never returned calls from, flooded the comments. "You deserve it, Queen. He's a lucky man. Re that bag." Dom girl's smiling face with hard eyes. David zoomed in on the Louis Vuitton handle. He'd seen that exact model while reviewing last quarter's joint card statements. She bookmarked it on their shared Amazon list as a vision board item. Retail therapy, she called it. Emotional investment, she'd once argued, as if handbags held dividends. David swiped up, opened his encrypted finance dashboard, pulled up the credit tree. Louis Vuitton Champs-Élysées, pending €2,870 and 41 cents. Timestamp 3 hours ago. Funny, the card still looked active because the transaction hadn't cleared yet. He tapped the transaction, selected dispute and lock. Reason unauthorized use, then checked the little box labeled Flag All Luxury Retail on that card cluster. He stared at the screen a second longer before hitting confirm. No warning, no pop-up, just a small green banner at the bottom that said, "Action processed successfully." The next screen showed a spinning circle, funds frozen, card suspended, merchant blocked. David set the phone down, picked up his fork, took another bite of eggs that had gone cold in the process. Across the room, the same old ceramic Florence bowl was still sitting on the windowsill. He'd meant to throw it out this morning, but now he left it, not as sentiment, but as inventory. Colleen's post had racked up nearly 130 likes in under an hour. Gerard must have been footing the rest of the trip, or so she thought. But David knew Gerard's type. Flashy watch, old money front, maxed out leverage behind the scenes. The kind of guy who takes women on first-class fantasies until the bill arrives. David tapped out a short message to his banker. Freeze remaining account ending in 8827. Revoke all shared access. Confirm when done. Within minutes, the reply came. Done. Transaction flagged and reversed. All linked assets disabled. We'll follow up after Paris closes for business. David placed his phone face down on the counter. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy, quiet. He imagined the scene 3 hours ahead where Colleen was probably sipping champagne on a rooftop, legs crossed, already posting the next story, unaware that her next swipe at checkout would be met not with validation, but a beep, then another, then a look from the cashier. She'd smile nervously, reach for another card, same result, and somewhere between realizing nothing worked and realizing why, that laugh from the photo would vanish. You didn't need to post a thing. Let the timeline collapse naturally. Call it scheduled silence. The Hotel de la Tremoille stood tucked neatly along a cobblestone stretch of the 8th arrondissement, the kind of place with velvet drapes, gold-plated elevator buttons, and concierges trained to speak softly but with authority. Colleen strutted through the glass doors as if she owned the entire building. She didn't notice Gerard lagging behind, jaw tight from hauling both their bags, hers monogrammed, his borrowed. But that was fine. He wasn't the point. This was her moment, her reveal, her arrival. She beamed at the front desk. "Bonjour," she purred. "Reservation for Reynolds, Colleen, 2 nights, deluxe terrace suite." The concierge, a polite young man with perfect posture and perfectly neutral eyebrows, smiled and nodded. "Of course, madam. May I see the card used to secure the booking?" She handed over the platinum card like she was handing over a golden ticket. Her nails painted a shade called Monaco wine. Tapped the counter twice, her signal to herself that everything was going exactly as planned. Swipe, pause, frown. The concierge looked up, almost apologetic. "Madam, this card appears to be invalid." Colleen let out a laugh. "Oh, that's impossible. Try it again. Swipe." Longer pause. He cleared his throat. "Do you have another?" Annoyed, she pulled out her fallback, another card David had set up for her ages ago. The one she used for personal expenses. Spa days, impulse furniture, swipe, beep. "Madam, I'm very sorry, but this one is also not accepting charges." A flicker of something moved behind her eyes. Her smile dimmed but didn't die. "There must be a glitch. I'll call my husband, ex-husband. It's complicated. He manages the accounts." She stepped aside, digging through her tote. Found her phone, dialed David, 1 ring, 2, 3, voicemail. She frowned and tried again. The line picked up, but it wasn't David. "This is Jared Lipton, legal representative for Mr. Kessler. How may I help you?" Colleen blinked. "Who? What?" "Mrs. Reynolds, I assume you're calling regarding your recent credit authorization failures. What is going on? I'm afraid your access to Mr. Kessler's financial accounts has been permanently revoked, effective 3 days ago. You should have received a notification. Are you kidding me?" Her voice went sharp. "I'm in Paris. I'm at the damn hotel and he can't just leave me stranded. On the contrary, Mrs. Reynolds, legally he can and has." She looked around. Gerard was pretending not to listen, but had turned an awkward shade of white. The concierge now had that trained, polite face people wear when witnessing someone fall off their pedestal in public. "You're making a mistake," she snapped into the phone. "No, Mrs. Reynolds, you made several. We're simply correcting them." Then click. The line went dead. Colleen stood frozen, phone still at her ear, heart pounding loud enough she could feel it in her teeth. She turned to Gerard, whispering as her throat dried out. "Could you maybe just cover the room?" He hesitated, shifted his weight. "I can cover the room," he said slowly, "but not the extras. The spa, the shopping, She did know. The Louis Vuitton bag suddenly felt heavier on her arm. She looked back at the concierge. "Run it again." He didn't move. "Madam, I am truly sorry. Perhaps you might wish to contact your financial institution directly." Behind her, 2 guests were waiting, their expressions a blend of pity and curiosity. Colleen lowered her voice. "Can I at least check in and fix the payment later?" The concierge hesitated. Gerard cleared his throat, took out his own card visibly, reluctantly, just charged the base rate. Nothing else. She caught the subtle dig. Her cheeks flushed. The Louis Vuitton bag, the Eiffel Tower post, the hashtags, the smug Parisian dream. It all cracked in the span of a 3-minute transaction failure. And David, thousands of miles away, not yelling, not begging, not even gloating, just gone, replaced by a lawyer with perfect diction and an even colder voicemail. "Welcome to Paris, Colleen. Payment due on arrival." The next morning, Colleen emerged from the room with her sunglasses already on, though there was no sun to block, just the gray, overcast glare of a Paris sky that seemed to mirror her mood. She hadn't slept. Gerard had made sure of that with his endless passive-aggressive muttering, his sighs every time she reached for her phone, his not-so-subtle comment about how some people should be more careful with their finances. They hadn't even had sex. He brought her to Paris and wouldn't even sleep with her. And now, as she approached the concierge desk to ask again about her blocked card, Gerard intercepted her like she was a misbehaving teenager. "No more of this," he said, voice low but firm. "I already paid for one night. That's enough. I'm not covering spa treatments and boutiques just because you packed wrong." She stared at him. "Packed wrong? You invited me?" "I invited you to stay, not to spend." He shrugged. "You're not exactly good for my wallet, Colleen." The slap wasn't physical, but it landed. She dropped her voice into a venomous whisper. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Do you know what I gave up to come here? Apparently access to your bank account," he said dryly. She blinked, opened her mouth, closed it again. People were starting to notice. 2 women sipping espresso at the corner cafe had their phones out. One of them was clearly recording. Colleen turned her back and hissed, "We had a deal." Gerard sighed like a disappointed employer. "We had nostalgia, not a contract." It snapped, the tension, the pretense, her last ounce of grace. "You're pathetic," she shouted, "dragging me across the world for what? To punish me? To look important?" Heads turned, conversations paused. A man at the next table put down his croissant. "You begged me to come," she said louder, as if public pity might morph into backup. "You told me I was the one that got away. I said that before I realized what I'd be getting away with again," he muttered, clearly forgetting how microphones and smartphones could amplify everything. Colleen's voice cracked. "I left my marriage for this. That did it." She collapsed onto the nearest velvet lobby chair, sobbing into her perfectly manicured hands. Snot mingled with mascara. The Louis Vuitton bag slid to the floor like even it had given up. Across the Atlantic, David sat in his study reading the morning paper. His phone buzzed. New video message, unknown sender. He opened it. Shaky vertical footage from a French travel blogger. In the frame, Colleen Reynolds, once self-declared queen of elevated living, breaking down under the crystal chandelier of a Parisian hotel while her silver fox ex tried to slink away, like a man who just overdrafted his patience. David didn't smile. He didn't forward it. He saved it in a folder marked supporting documentation, right next to the email from the banker, the signed documents from the lawyer, and the photograph of Colleen's finally, someone who knows my worth post. Documentation, not for revenge, for reference. Because the thing about Colleen was, she never thought the audience would change. She thought she'd always be the one holding the mic. She didn't realize David had left the stage months ago, and the lights were going out, one click at a time. The call came just after 9. David was outside trimming the hedges he'd let go wild during the last 6 months, the same months Colleen had filled with wine tastings, fake yoga retreats, and lectures about how retirement doesn't have to mean decay. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled off his gloves, checked the screen. Rachel. His thumb hovered a moment before answering. He hadn't spoken to her since Colleen left for Paris, not out of avoidance, but because he knew Colleen would try to triangulate sympathy through their daughter the second things started cracking. "Hey, Dad," Rachel said, voice hesitant. "Sorry to call so early." He wiped sweat from his temple. "You okay?" "Yeah, just confused." David walked to the porch, sat on the step. "She's posting some really weird stuff," Rachel continued. "Yesterday, she was all Paris bliss and tagging this Gerard guy like he's Cary Grant, and now she's on her story crying into a cappuccino and saying things like, 'Betrayal comes in legal form.'" David didn't reply. Rachel went on. "And then this morning it was a photo of the Louis Vuitton store with the caption, 'When the money's yours but not in your name, are you really broke?' That one made David snort. "Dad," Rachel said gently, "what's going on?" He watched a beetle crawl across his boot. Sunlight had just begun cutting through the maple branches overhead. "Is she okay?" Rachel asked. David took a long breath. "She's in Paris," he said finally. "With someone who knows her worth, apparently." "Yeah, I saw that post." Rachel paused. "It felt off." "She'll be fine," David said. "She's resilient." Rachel hesitated. "Are you okay?" He looked across the yard, trimmed lawn, humming an air conditioning unit, a ceramic frog she'd painted when she was 8, still tucked near the flower bed. "I've never been better," he said, and for the first time in years he meant it. There was a silence on the line, not awkward, just thick with understanding. "You don't have to tell me everything," Rachel said. "But I saw enough. I'm not stupid. I know. I love you, Dad. I know that too." Rachel cleared her throat. "I got to get to work. Just call me if you need anything, okay? Okay. She hung up. David sat still a moment, the phone resting on his knee. He hadn't wanted to pull Rachel into any of it, hadn't even considered telling her the truth, that her mother's luxury wasn't earned, that her Parisian sob story was the result of a very long, very deliberate unraveling. But Rachel didn't need the details. She was smart, and more importantly, she wasn't like her mother. He stood, slid the phone into his pocket and went back to the hedge trimmer. One edge at a time. That was how you reclaimed a home and yourself. The Uber dropped her off just past 10 p.m., headlights washing over the driveway she once described as quaint in a dated way. Now, as Colleen stepped out with her heels in one hand and a sour taste in her mouth, everything looked smaller, meaner, like the house had been sitting here silently judging her. She was exhausted, jet-lagged. Her skin felt sticky from airport air, her temples pounding from Gerard's last words before she stormed out of the hotel. Next time, bring your own credit. Her Louis Vuitton bag, empty now, save for a few hotel shampoos and bruised dignity, dragged behind her as she approached the front door. She punched in the code on the keypad. Nothing. She punched it again, slower. The tiny red light blinked back. Denied. She squinted at it like it might apologize. Third time, code, enter, red light, no click, no welcoming beep. Are you kidding me? She muttered, half laughing, already digging through her tote for her keys. She tried the knob. Locked? Of course. Fine, she thought. Garage. She walked around, clicked the remote on her key fob. Nothing. She clicked again, pressed harder. Dead. She held it up like she could signal from the stars. Still nothing. Jesus, she hissed, smacking the fob with the heel of her hand. A motion light blinked on, slow and sleepy, illuminating her standing in a now unfamiliar yard, hair tangled, mascara faded, dragging a $3,000 handbag like a sack of potatoes. From the porch next door, an older neighbor, Mrs. Leary, peeked through her screen. Oh, she said, surprised. I thought you two had already moved. Colleen whipped toward her. What? I just assumed. Mrs. Leary continued, stepping out awkwardly in her robe. I mean, the moving truck was here 3 days ago. And the locks? Well, I figured maybe the house had been sold. Colleen blinked. What moving truck? She asked, voice too sharp, too fast. The neighbor raised her eyebrows. The one with the storage company logo. It was here all day Thursday. Took out a whole set of furniture. Colleen tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. No, that must have been a mistake. This is my house. Well, Mrs. Leary said, slowly retreating back into her doorway. Maybe talk to your husband or ex-husband. Colleen's throat went dry. She turned back to the door, pounded, nothing. She rang the doorbell, held it, still nothing. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking now, and called David. It rang and rang and rang. Then voicemail. You've reached David Kessler, please leave a message. She didn't. She hung up, then called again. Voicemail again. Voicemail. The porch light blinked off behind her. Motion sensors. Time's up. She sat down on the cold step, knees to her chest, phone in hand. The concrete felt harder than it should have. She looked around the darkened neighborhood, her kingdom, and realized the gates had closed. The drive to her sister's place felt longer than usual, even though it was barely 20 minutes. Colleen kept blinking hard, like she could reset the nightmare with every mile. Her car's console still displayed the Paris airport time zone. She hadn't figured out how to change it back. She hadn't planned to go to Diane's. Hell, she hadn't even told Diane about Paris. Just posted the photos and let the comments trickle in like wine refills. But now she needed someone to see her, to witness how absurd this all was. Someone to say, he can't do that to you, Colleen. Except when she turned onto Diane's street, something felt off. Her sister's porch light was off, the driveway empty, no music inside, not even the glow of the kitchen window that usually stayed on all night. Then she saw it, an envelope taped to the iron gate like a ransom note, perfectly centered, pressed flat like someone had taken time to make sure it didn't flutter or curl. Her name was handwritten across the front in sharp black ink. Colleen, please forward all future correspondence through counsel. She stared, just stood there, door half open, 1 foot out like gravity had paused around her. No, hey sis, no text, no invitation inside, just that. She stepped forward, peeled the envelope from the gate. Inside, everything was clean, brutally so. A notarized summary of the dissolution of their marital assets. Her name, once attached to 3 properties, now struck out with sharp black lines. Revised ownership filings under Kessler Holdings Limited Liability Company. The home, the lake cabin, the joint condo in Arizona, all reassigned. Every line item signed, initialed, sealed, even the Mercedes-Benz's title transferred last month. She hadn't noticed. It was his gift. She'd argued once. A present. How could he? The air around her shifted. The world tilted just slightly. She dropped the envelope in the yard, let it flutter against the grass like something diseased, then stood there watching. Her face was stone, but her fingers were twitching. 5 minutes passed. Maybe 10. Then she stepped forward, crouched down, and picked it back up, hands shaking. Not because she cared about the paper or the stamps or the limited liability companies, but because it meant he had been planning, quietly, diligently, for months, maybe longer. While she posted hashtags, he posted filings. While she laughed at him, he bought her out. Colleen stood at the gate with the envelope pressed to her chest, breathing like someone who just realized the air in their world had been replaced. David hadn't taken revenge. He'd taken precision. And now all she had left was the car she was driving, which was leased under her name with 2 months left. No home, no access, and worst of all, no audience. The cabin hadn't changed much. Same chipped paint on the porch swing, same creaking screen door, same stubborn pine sap on the railings, no matter how often they power washed it. It had been Colleen's idea to buy the place, back when weekend escapes were fashionable among the suburban upper middle class. She'd insisted they needed a sanctuary, somewhere she could breathe, she'd said. Now she pulled up in her leased sport utility vehicle, the engine cutting off like a final gasp. The air was thick with pine and unresolved history. She stepped out, adjusting her jacket like armor, makeup subtle for once, hair tied back with purpose. This wasn't a plea. She told herself this was negotiation. David was already inside, of course. She walked up the steps, each one louder than she remembered, and pushed open the door. He was seated in the living room in that same worn leather chair she used to mock, called it a divorce's recliner. Now it looked like a throne or a courtroom bench. The air inside was cold. The kind of chill that made breath visible, made skin contract. He didn't stand, just gestured to the chair opposite him. On the coffee table, a small black tablet, no papers, no drinks, no distractions. "I appreciate you coming," he said, voice low, precise. She sat, crossed her legs slowly. "David, I just think there's been some miscommunication." He nodded. "There has, but not on my end." She gave a breathy laugh, the kind she used when she wanted to reset a room. "Look, Paris was a mess. Gerard's a child. I shouldn't have." He reached forward and tapped the screen. The tablet lit up. A video played, grainy footage, the hotel lobby in Paris, Colleen yelling, Gerard standing stiff with his arms crossed, her voice climbing, "You begged me to come," then collapsing into sobs. Then another clip, her laughing on a phone call. A voice, Gerard, saying, "Your husband's a joke," and hers replying, "He's not even that. He's like a chair you forget is in the room." David paused the video, sat back. She stared, mouth slightly open. "I never intended to show this to anyone," he said. "But you need to understand something. You didn't just humiliate me. You revealed yourself." She blinked, started to say something. He held up a hand. "I'm not here for your apology," he said, voice perfectly calm. "You'll mean it for the next 5 minutes. Then you'll post something cryptic on social media and we'll start the cycle again." "That's not fair," she said quietly. "You're being cold." "Accurate," he corrected. She swallowed. "David, I made mistakes, but this freezing me out, locking me out of everything." "You made choices," he said. "I made preparations." He reached down and pulled another envelope from a bag beneath his chair. He handed it to her. She hesitated, then took it with both hands, almost reverently. Inside, a final settlement letter, notarized. Simple. All communication henceforth through legal counsel. Final property delineation. Notice of transferred pension benefits. Release of joint holdings. 1 page, clean, unemotional. Colleen folded it slowly. Her hands trembled again. "Is this it?" she whispered. "This is it. I thought you'd at least—" She trailed off. "What?" he asked, finally looking her straight in the eye. "Scream? Cry? Beg for one more chance to finance your fantasy?" Her lip quivered. "I'm not that version of me anymore," he said. "You never were yours." The silence between them filled the cabin. The wind pressed against the old windows like a witness waiting to be called. Colleen stood up slowly. "I'll have my lawyer review it, please do." She opened the door, then turned back like a woman hoping for one last elevator ride to the floor she'd been evicted from. He didn't move, didn't blink, so she left. and David sat there for a long moment after, listening to the gravel crunch under her tires as she drove away. The wind rattled the porch swing, and for once, it didn't sound like a warning, it sounded like closure. The sun was just beginning to set when Colleen pulled into the driveway. Her driveway, or so she still thought, the way a ghost might still claim ownership over the house it died in. Except now there were signs she didn't recognize. The flower pot she used to curse for being so dated. Gone. The bronze door knocker she once picked out from an overpriced design catalog, replaced with a plain brushed steel one. And the security camera above the doorway that was new, sleek, blinking red. Her pulse thudded. She stepped out of the car carefully, as if movement itself might trigger another loss. 2 bags in hand, whatever she hadn't lost in Paris or shoved into her sister's trunk, she approached the front door. She didn't bother with the keypad this time. She already knew the key in her pocket, dead metal. Instead, taped to the center of the door with a single strip of black duct tape was a letter, one she didn't need to open to know who it was from. Colleen, everything inside this house was paid for by me. You mock that. Enjoy Paris. You're no longer welcome here. No signature, no threats, no emotion, just the kind of surgical dismissal only David could deliver. So plain, so final. It felt like a surgical incision across the skin of her old life. Her throat closed. She looked up at the camera, just a smooth red blinking eye staring down at her, watching, recording. Witnessing the last shred of her illusion peel away, she turned back to her car in disbelief, looked in the windows. The house was staged differently, cleaner, tidier, as if her very presence had once cluttered the place. Her bags fell onto the porch as she sat down hard on the top step. Breath shallow, fingers frozen. Then her phone buzzed, unknown number. She stared at it, already knowing it wouldn't be good. She answered. "Miss Reynolds," a voice asked. "Too chipper. This is Lynn from Guardian Storage in Haverhill. We just wanted to let you know your unit number is due for payment today. Also, there's been a rate increase starting this cycle." Colleen blinked. "What?" "Yes, your name's now listed as the sole contact. Looks like the account transfer came through yesterday. We'll need full payment by 6 p.m. to avoid automatic listing for public auction." "Public? What auction?" "Standard policy, ma'am. Non-payment leads to clearance. It's in the lease agreement." She hung up. Her mouth was dry, her heart drum beat in her ears. David had moved everything, not just the furniture, the dishes, the linens, the photos, the clothes. Everything she thought she might come home to reclaim, even in rage, even in pity, was gone. Relocated, rented, and now hers to pay for, or lose. The porch beneath her creaked. A wind stirred. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. She looked up again at the camera as if it might offer her mercy or explanation or a second chance. Inside, miles away, David sat at his desk with a glass of bourbon, the security feed open on his screen. Colleen collapsed, motionless, a monument to every smirk, every slight, every casually cruel word she'd ever dropped like ashes on his shoulders. He watched her for a moment, no anger left, just clarity. Then slowly he moved the cursor over the feed window and turned it.